Welcome to the Hunter's Advantage podcast, where a group of budget-minded hunters scour the woods for whitetail bucks and whatever other big game is in season. Tune in each week to hear the hilarious public and private land hunting stories and mistake-filled lessons learned. We believe that every hunt brings us closer to God and that we exist to share the good news. And now, your hosts, Christian Babcock and Jake Gaylord.
So what you been doing?
Nothing. Hanging out.
Hanging out.
Looking at draw results.
Dude,
That's
I'm
pretty
so
much it.
upset about that. Is there anyone else that's listening to this right now? All 34 people. Is there anyone else that didn't draw out for Kansas?
That's the "What's up, brother" sign right there.
Thank you, sir.
I know Taylor drew out for Kansas because I was in his group.
So is that still your all's mindset? Is muzzleloader over beanfields and poking one?
That's the
What's
only
your
mindset.
expectations? Like what are you? Obviously, your expectations are like biggest one you can find. But what would you settle for?
Man, I think it really depends on how far you're driving and how much time you have. And so a 2-week season is not a whole lot of time to try to kill a deer. So I think for me, anything probably 125 or better.
Yeah,
would probably get shot. I think that's a realistic goal too.
Anything mountable? Like, would you shoot a 125 and euro it, or would you be like, no, that's shoulder mount?
I'd probably euro it. Yeah.
Would you 125 inch? You're Pope and Young, out of state buck, and you euro.
Well, it can't be Pope and Young with a rifle.
Damn, that's true.
So
That's true. I understand.
yeah, I probably would. I'd probably end up.
Well, I mean, understandable.
I don't know what Taylor's comments are, but
Alvaro Aguirre. Damn it, I said it right the first time.
you had it earlier.
What are your thoughts on calling in black bear with predator calls? You're the only one that's black bear hunted, brother.
Well, when I went black bear hunting, we hunted them over bait piles in Saskatchewan. So I don't know. To call them in with a predator call, you probably couldn't be. You probably couldn't be where I was hunting because we were hunting in big, thick aspen stands, and so I mean you can't see 30 yards in there. So that's not really exact. I don't want to predator call one and then be like, oh, there he is, 30 yards away on the ground,
Running away.
Yeah. So I'm sure you could. I mean, at the end of the day, it still is a predator. So why couldn't you predator call it? I just don't have a ton of experience shooting black bear. I've only shot one.
Since they are a predator, would that be illegal to use an electronic call with the bear?
I don't know. I've never seen anybody call in a bear with a predator call, but it'd be a pretty sweet video. I'd probably watch it.
Yeah.
I know if you watch the grizzly hunts, you see people using that mouth call quite a bit. Like,
oh, yeah. But
Yeah.
that's not electronic. Because
No.
kind of like with deer, like you can use a grunt tube or a
but
bleak
no
can or whatever,
electronic.
but can't do electronic, which is
Yeah.
odd.
I'd be interested to see that.
You want that one?
Yeah, so we got nc.deer.hunter said, have y'all heard any updates on the Alexander case? No, I haven't. I haven't heard any updates on the Alexander case, which, we've kind of been schooled a little bit through some comments about the Alexander case. And there's just an indictment. I did talk to my dad, who used to be a police officer, and he was like, oh, well, indictments, those come all the time, and they usually throw the kitchen sink at you. So, no, I'm kind of I don't really want to eat any more crow on this kind of case. So I'm really not doing I'm not going to say too much about it, but yeah, what's out there is pretty much everything that we know about it.
Yeah. He also had a follow-up question. What's your opinion on all this CWD laws?
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm kind of stuck between the two sides of the argument, which is like, one is like, hey, Bronson Strickland's, we had him on the podcast, and the idea that like, yeah, this is a pretty big disease, we're trying to figure it out. And then somewhere between that and Don Higgins is like, this is a political disease.
Yeah.
Pretty much a way to manipulate management of deer through, similar to COVID.
So you think it's a problem? Like it is a problem, but it's not as big as people think it is.
I just don't think people know. I think the reality of it is people don't know how big of a problem it is. Like CWD has been around since the 50s or the 60s. It started in Colorado, I think is what it was. But I know it's one of those things that people say, like, do deer die of CWD or they die with CWD? It's just kind of like COVID, you die of pneumonia, but they're like, well, he had COVID, so he died of COVID.
Yeah.
I don't know. Honestly don't know too much about it, but it's interesting to hear people talk about CWD because Oklahoma, you saw what they were doing with CWD.
Mm-mm.
So Oklahoma, I read an article that they are going to release captive deer into the herd, deer that have genetics. Apparently, there's some sort of gene or biomarker that helps you determine if a deer is like CWD resistant or not. And their idea is to breed those deer in with the wild deer, and that
So
they'll
they're-
be more resistant to CWD.
See, but couldn't that also bring just that strand in
I don't know.
a way? Because if they're resistant, let's say they built up some sort of antibodies because maybe they lived in that area and they didn't die from it. So maybe they have some sort of special antibodies that they however they did accumulated from being there. So they're just going to locate them here and be like, well, hopefully they don't get sick.
Yeah, I don't know. But I tell you, I listened to a podcast with Don Higgins talking about what they did in Oklahoma, and he was very complimentary over what they're doing because he said that the people that are on the forefront of the CWD research are the captive deer herds because they're the ones that have so much to lose with the antlers and the hunting and the monetarily they have the most to lose. So they're kind of on the forefront of it. And it's an interesting topic, and I don't know a ton about it except for what I hear from other people. But I know it's a big deal. It's just like they have to do more research and figure it out.
Yeah. We got a few comments rolling in, but we're just going to try to stay on the same topic for a second. So we're gonna jump to this one, but we will come back down the line. Promise. He said there's been 14 deer test positive in North Carolina. All were killed by hunters or roadkill. They test over 26,000 deer.
14 out of 26,000.
I like those odds.
Yeah. I wouldn't be too concerned with something if it was 14 out of 26,000. What's interesting is I don't know. EHD isn't a big deal around here, but I know it's a huge deal in the Midwest. And everyone that I've heard talk about CWD versus EHD say that EHD is a much bigger problem than CWD.
Mm-hmm.
But I think CWD is COVID in 2019. Like it's this big scary beast that people don't know a whole lot about, and so they think it's going to wipe out the whole deer herd. Maybe it will, but it also seems like a really good way to manipulate how people manage and hunt for whitetails into a way that you'd want under the guise of, it seems like a Trojan horse people could use. So that's kind of anything government regulated, though.
I just don't know enough about it to really speak on it because Oklahoma, it's not like a huge problem here in Oklahoma. I mean, nothing that I've encountered.
No, but it is a way that people are, a lot of states I think are trying to ban baiting because of CWD because the way that it's transferred is like through
bait piles and all that.
Bait piles and like saliva and like rubbing on scrapes, like rubbing foreheads and
yeah. So how?
But deer do that regardless.
Why are you worried about bait piles? Yeah, that might be an extra form, but you know how? Yeah, just like you said, scrapes, rubs, like you're not going to keep them from communicating. You can't do what COVID did to us and 6 foot rule. You can't implement that in the wild.
They don't care.
That's ignorant.
Yeah, deer don't care.
But I mean, if it's an actual problem where like you're seeing like end time results of like just mass numbers of deer dying, then that's understandable. I can see that.
Yeah.
Going back to electronic calls, they do call them with electronic calls. Okay, they call bears with electronic calls.
That's interesting.
No electric, like a bone collector rabbit call.
Yeah, I haven't seen it work on. I haven't watched any videos where they do that on black bear, but I can tell you I've seen some grizzly ones where they mouth call them, and it's pretty freaking scary because they come over the berm at like 30 yards, and I'm like, that thing's 2,000 pounds.
Have you ever seen that one where the dude kills a big old grizzly with a recurve?
I've seen Tim Wells shoot one on the head with a recurve.
Yeah, that was crazy.
The slot master.
I think EHD is way worse. Oh, it's way worse than CWD.
Yeah,
I don't know the difference.
The EHD is what happens with the midge gnat. I'm not gonna act like to be an expert, but it's like very quick fatality, and it wipes out like mass herds and like a very, because CWD they say like deer usually die a couple years after. EHD is like very.
Don't they say it's like something to do with like the soil? Like it's within
CWD,
the soil.
Yeah, CWD they say the prion can live in the soil for like thousands of years. It's like, well, then why kill all the deer? then why exterminate them? Because what they do for CWD is they come in with like hit
sharpshooters
and they kill them all. Yeah,
we're definitely not a sharpshooter.
Yeah.
Speaking of not being a sharpshooter, Taylor Smith, they're going to
let private landowners.
Go ahead.
They're going to let Taylor said they're going to let private landowners purchase these deer for their genetics. It's a money game. Talking about the deer that they're releasing in Oklahoma.
So it's like some bioengineered,
yeah. I don't.
organic deer.
Yeah, I don't know. Another thing that was interesting that I heard about that topic is that the deer in Oklahoma, they were going to have to. Well, what I heard Don Higgins talk about was they're going to have to address the antler scoring in the Boone and Crockett and Pope and Young in the state if they are to release genetically like a high-fence deer into the population. That's you get into those issues where now those deer breed and now there's bigger deer. But another argument that I've heard is like, hey, every deer in a high fence isn't 200 inches. There's 140, 150 inch deer. But if you had to pick, I'd probably rather pick the high fence genetics than a wild genetic because you get a lot of 110 inch 8-pointers in the wild. You don't see a lot of those in high fences. So that's another interesting part of the argument that I haven't really thought too much about. But it is it's a wild time.
I don't understand it. I say we just what do you think about that? Like, let nature run its course, but in a way you really can't, right? Because like obviously we have dominion over the creatures, so that doesn't mean necessarily always to like, I have dominion over it, so I'm going to shoot it and kill it and eat it. It doesn't mean that. Does that mean like the whole process of like obviously caring for that species, so therefore we have to intervene with this type of things? Like, how do you take that?
I don't know. I don't know exactly what you do. I don't know if there's a good answer, but I can tell you when they're sharpshooting all the deer, they're not incentivizing people to test for it. So your reward for getting a CWD positive deer is all your deer get killed. I'm good.
That is
a lot of
that's
people,
very true.
A lot of landowners say, well, I'm not testing for it then.
In North Carolina, in the CWD area, you can't bait in off season, but bait during the season. I don't understand their reasons.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
unless they're like, okay, germs like warm weather because that's where how germs multiply. Unless they're doing something like that, I don't know. But that really doesn't make sense to me either because they're probably most active. Now, granted, I know they bachelor up during the summer, right? And then as soon as testosterone starts flowing, they start dispersing a little bit, but that doesn't help the doe groups any. So I don't understand.
I also give wildlife agencies grace because if I had this problem, I'd be like, I don't know how to solve it.
Yeah, lose problem.
Yeah, like
kind of
here's the thing: you do any action is going to get criticized by people, especially the court of public opinion. So I do have empathy for people that are trying to manage deer herds for a state because it's definitely not easy. Somebody's always going to be pissed at you.
CWD is flu. EHD is Ebola. Okay.
Well, I don't know much about Ebola, to be honest.
That's another government plug.
Yeah.
But you let private land guys pick what genetics they want. They are going to look for rack genetics.
Yeah, that one's from Taylor Smith.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I think it's I don't know if there's any more articles out about it, and it seems like I always get spammed when I read an article. It's always something wrong. I should have done more research, but I don't know if that's true or not, if they're letting private land people buy them. I hadn't heard that.
I mean, if all the research mainly comes from Texas, right?
No, not necessarily. There's a lot of stuff going on right now for CWD.
Really?
I don't think CWD is a big problem in Texas.
No, I was mainly talking about like all the genetic stuff, though.
Oh, yeah. I don't know where they're going to bring those does in or bucks in from. That'll be interesting.
Very cool. NC Deer Hunter, I question: can we as hunters put out a special bait that would help cure CWD?
Well,
what you usually do is you put blood thinners in your corn, don't you?
Yeah.
One little needle prick and they just bleed out.
Yeah, if you miss low, you nick a leg and they're done. Now, from the research that I've done about CWD is one of the things that they think cures it is obviously one is genetics. Some deer are probably going to be predispositioned to having certain issues, but the other one is nutrition. They think that nutrition is a reason or is a way to help cure CWD, which I guess we'll see. And he said he had another follow-up said, or at least to help slow it down. Yeah. I don't know. I'm glad that we have people that it's their sole job to research this kind of stuff because
way above our pay grade.
It's way above.
Yeah, I don't know.
Say that in the main article.
Yep.
Yeah, about makes sense.
You got this
one. How do you say that? Alvaro Aguera? Is that how you say it? I'm guessing. How do you find deer in an area with such large fields and little to no tree cover? Seems like it'd be hard here in North Dakota, and I have no experience for this state. That's a good question. With large fields and little to no tree cover.
That's
Sounds like
kind
a
of,
Kansas situation.
yeah, man. I would look for maybe where you do have trees. Kind of start there, but if it's just, let's say it's like a cattle pasture, I don't know what it is, but what your situation is, or it could just be, large ag fields. But if it's, just tall native grass or something like that, I mean, I'd try to find those little fingers of trees right there. And I mean, especially during the rut, kind of be keen in on that, because from our personal experiences, it seems like they like moving around in the grass. And also those those keystone trees where you maybe have just like one large tree in this basically pasture, but as long as it's like somewhat tall grass, they usually like to kind of migrate towards that. I mean,
I'd say you'd probably look in the thickest area, the thickest piece of cover that's not a tree. So you have little things like little briar thickets, or maybe grasses that are super tall and thick. I'd be looking in maybe even ditches or cuts that have maybe some topography change in them.
I've seen that too, where it's like maybe like a 6-foot little ditch, and if the grass is mowed, you can kind of see like just the heads walking through there, and you're like, what the heck is that? Is that a coyote? And then all of a sudden they'll come out of that ravine, and it's like a little doe group, and you're like, huh.
And they don't need a whole lot to disappear. You got to think, when a deer's on the ground, they're only 12 inches tall or something like that. So I'd be looking in the thickest cover you can find. And a lot of the stuff that we hunted in Kansas did not have much trees on it, but it would just be nice, like ditches and creeks, and they bed in those little topography changes or in the thickest area. They're going to be in the thickest stuff you can find, even if there's no trees.
Security cover's key. Gotcha. It's all large ag. Haven't seen a single deer here.
That sounds like a different problem.
Yeah. Well, how's the neighboring property, right? Like, obviously you don't have any trees on your property, but does the neighbors have properties? Or does the neighbors have timber on their property? Because like, I got a spot where it's kind of seems like your situation. I got a big creek running through this property that basically connects large timber on the north and large timber to the south. And typically during the rut is when I see the most action, and all they do is just the bucks travel that creek from the south to the north, or the north to the south, looking for does or chasing or doing whatever. And if one of those neighbors, gets a little hunting happy, and maybe they're just blowing up either section of that timber, it really limits the traffic. So it kind of depends on what the neighbors do, and if you have that surrounding timber or some sort of security cover around that property. Because if you don't have bedding and you have food, then like if you're in an ag place, the deer are probably going to find a spot that kind of has both, if that makes sense. So that might be why they're not using yours.
Yeah, if you're in large isolated ag too, if there's no bedding cover around, they'll probably just eat at night. They'll probably travel to that as a destination food source. So,
and we just shot a podcast on that earlier. It'll probably come out within I don't know when that one will come out, but it's literally about our experiences about having to kind of travel to get into those bigger quality of bucks.
You got them. Yeah, you got them in North Dakota. They're there. Maybe not in your local area. I would assume they're there somewhere. He had a follow up. Yeah, neighbors.
You got better eyesight than me from this far.
I got that 2010. Yeah, neighbors have a creek running through with a thick tree line. Yeah, that's probably where they are then. Beach 303, where I hunt in Oklahoma, I see more porcupines than bobcats. Have you two seen any porcupines in Oklahoma?
I think I've only seen one porcupine in my entire life.
I want to say I have only seen one myself as well. I don't see a lot of porcupines. I don't know what part of Oklahoma you are with all the porcupines. I see more bobcats than I do porcupines, and I don't see.
I want to say that's probably northwest, isn't it?
I don't know.
I mean, obviously not like Boise City, like where the only thing is a yucca bush, but I'm thinking like closer to New Mexico.
Yeah, maybe I'll respond. NC Deer Hunter said, "Look in the tallest grass in the field." Yeah, I think you're right on that one. Anything that offers cover, yeah. Anything that offers security cover.
So let me ask you this: would you rather have security cover or food? on your property.
Security cover,
Why
no
is that?
doubt. I've hunted so many properties that have bedding only and no food. The reality is the majority of a deer's life is going to be spent in bedding and probably not feeding. So having a place that offers security means that those deer are going to spend the majority of their lives in that cover. And you can always hunt them heading to food. But it's, it's when they get on those big ag fields and stuff, it's harder to narrow down exactly where they're going to use and all that stuff. I just enjoy having cover because if you have the cover, it means you have the deer for a good portion of their lives.
That is true. Plus, if you're just hunting a big ag field, there's only really one time a day that you could kind of hunt it.
Yeah,
in the evening.
Yeah, in the evening, or sneaking in behind them as they're going back to bed.
Yeah.
But I could tell you this: every time I've hunted an ag field, and in the morning, it's like, huh? I'm like climbing up
the song
stand,
of their people. Yeah,
and I'm just watching them disappear. I'm watching them disappear after that.
Listen, guys, we wouldn't be able to do the podcast if it wasn't for you all. So we just want to say that you guys are greatly appreciated, and thank you for following along each week.
And speaking of support, we are partnered with Out on a Limb Manufacturing, and I can tell you from firsthand experience, Matt and Chase are great, down-to-earth guys, and they make some of the best saddle hunting products out there. Whether you're looking for a set of climbing sticks or a mobile, lightweight, hang-on tree stand, or maybe you're even a one-sticker.
You mean tree Pilates?
Yes, tree Pilates. If you've been to the grocery store or the gas station lately, you know that Uncle Joe is doing his absolute worst to take all your money. That's why we need hunting gear that lasts year after year. And trust me, I've been rocking the same Out on a Limb Shakar climbing sticks for 4 years and the Ridge Runner 2.0 saddle hunting platform for a few years as well. This gear is built to last.
We can confidently say that Out on a Limb is the best bang for your buck.
And it's the best gear if you want to deflate a big old buck.
Ooh. Make sure you use code HNTA15 at outonalimbmfg.com for 15% off anything on their website.
So if you can show them the same support that you guys show us, please go to outonalimbmfg.com and use code HNTA15 for 15% off at checkout. Now let's get back to the podcast.
Here, what's this? If they're not in the open, they're definitely in the cover. Yeah. What do you think the best lesson you learned hunting ag country in Kansas was?
There's more deer there, it seems like. But the biggest lesson, so it's going to sound stupid, but we don't hunt ag where we are, right? Like where we spend most of our time on public is, kind of the mountainous stuff. So you're hunting, drainages and draws and basically pine tree stuff, right?
Select cuts.
Yes. The whole bed to food it sounds stupid, was extremely new to me. I thought I had the concept, but then when we were hunting with our buddy Jake Ayers, it made me open my eyes to how broad that phrase was, the bed to food. Because at first it's like, okay, you're looking at this piece of public, and it's like, okay, it has food and it looks like it has bedding right here. But the way he hunted it, and he used like all this, it wasn't just that piece of public he was looking at. He was like, okay, there's food here, but there's bedding 2 properties over, or vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how broad of a picture he was trying to paint and gather all that intel from.
Yeah.
And it worked out for him.
And see, Deer Hunter said, I hunted a soybean field that took up the whole property, and the deer always hit it at night, never in the day. There was no cover for them. Yeah, that's exactly right. And not only just deer, how do you expect a mature buck to walk into a field during daylight that offers no security cover and no close exit? Like when I'll
tell you how he's going to, right at last light.
Yeah. Being 250 yards out in the middle of a soybean field and you got to sprint to cover, it's like, most hillbillies can get 4 rounds off by the time he gets out of the field.
He's probably caught one in the butt.
Yeah. You can't expect him to do that. That's why, that's a good point on the ag stuff, is like looking at a broader picture. When you don't really think about it when you hunt small pieces of private, because you're like, this is all I have, so it doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're hunting a piece of public, or there's multiple pieces, and you're like, okay, he could be coming from 2 properties over, or that soybean that's half a mile away, I can get in between him and that bedding that's half a mile that way.
And you got to think, depending on where you hunt, like if you're hunting the mountainous stuff, it's like, okay, 2 miles is a pretty good hike just because it's like this. But when you're talking ag country like Kansas or something, that ain't nothing for a deer. If that ain't nothing for a human to travel that far, when you're walking flat ground, like a deer, easily.
Yeah, that's something I learned in the Midwest, is like, you think in the mountains, if a deer goes 600 yards, it might burn 100 calories because they're up and down, up and down. But in the Midwest, like destination food sources, you think about that term, that's a real thing because
Well,
there might be a food source 2 miles away that they're willing to travel to
it
eat.
shows their body mass difference too.
Oh yeah.
Because those mountain bucks, skinny old bodies, large old racks. It looks like a labradoodle with a good set of antlers on top. And I mean, it's just the amount of calories they burn, right? Now it could do with the food, but there's a whole lot of food, a whole lot of browse.
Yeah.
In the mountain stuff too. Well, I mean, it doesn't seem like it from like our perspective, but like from a deer perspective, basically everything's food. But there, it's like, the big ag stuff. It's like, okay, they got beans or corn or whatever they're munching on, and along with the browse, and they don't have to burn all those calories. It's like, yeah, that it makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And those Midwestern deer's body size is insane. I mean, a 2-year-old deer in Kansas is like a 6-year-old deer in the mountains. I mean, I remember that buck that I shot. It was probably a 2-year-old, the one I shot in Kansas, and I remember being like, "This is a big bodied deer.
Yeah,
like it's
kinda
not
threw you for a
small."
loop.
And I bet the one that Carol shot in Kansas was probably a 3-year-old. And that deer, he said, I almost gave him a heart attack dragging it out of the woods, which is funny.
Yeah.
Beach 303 said he's in Blaine County, West Greer.
What was his question again?
He was talking about the porcupine.
Oh, gotcha. So where's Blaine County at?
I don't know where
Let's look her up.
Blaine County is. Geary. I don't know exactly where that is.
Okay, basically just
over by Sealing.
West Central, kind of.
Yep. Must have a big
Just
porcupine.
east of Clinton.
Big porcupine population over in that area. Learn something new every day.
Oklahoma's a great place.
It's very biologically diverse.
Oh,
ow.
Bop.
Mike Tyson. NC Deer Hunter said, I hunt in the North Carolina mountains and the deer are in very good shape. Skinny and mostly all muscle. They zigzag up the side of the steep slopes. Yeah, I love that crap. What's your favorite thing about mountain deer?
The horns. Like the it just seems like they have more chocolate horns or like darker, those caramel horns.
Mhm.
I mean, every now and then, like if you're around Northeast or something, Oklahoma, you might have one that's like pretty dark, but there's nothing. Like it could be stupid dark or it could be like that nice caramel color.
Mhm.
And it's awesome.
I had one that busted. He winded me
That
and
big
busted
8?
me, and he ran away. And he looked like just a caramel candy bar, the color, and it was the most gorgeous horn rack I'd ever seen. It was just, which it's a stark contrast because you go. I think a lot of it has to do with the light, like how much light they get to their antlers. Because you see the Kansas bucks, they're almost snow white in a lot of the antlers, and it's like I think that's something that has to do with not having any cover. There's sun constantly on the rack, so bleaching it.
There was some research done on that, and this has been probably a year and a half since I've read this, but so just stick with me. But it has to do with that, the amount of cover.
Mm-hmm.
It also has to do with the type of trees that they rub on whenever they like shed their velvet and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And like there's like a mixture between the two on, is that better?
Mm-hmm.
On like the amount of sunlight and the type of trees, because the type of trees, when they rub, the sap gets on the antlers and then the sun bakes it. And it's like that whole process of like oxidation type ordeal.
That's interesting.
So, yeah.
That's what causes it, huh?
Allegedly.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really cool. Deer are really cool. Taylor said, any advice for a first-time hunter in Kansas asking for a friend? Who are you asking for, me or Carol?
Well, I think between me and Christian, we have about 60 inches of bone in Kansas. So your question would be better off elsewhere.
Any advice in the first? I can tell you how to see one. We can take this generally though, because Taylor's going to kill a deer anyway, so we don't have to give him any advice. But you didn't draw out to Kansas, so there's definitely maybe you can send your mojo to someone else. What would you tell someone first time hunting the Midwest, like ag country?
I would go as early as possible and as late as possible. Meaning, I mean, you might be able to sneak, but I guess for you guys, you only have a 2-week season.
Mm-hmm.
So,
let's just say the average
in general,
person. Yeah.
I mean, I would pick where you go, and yeah, that's about it. I'd pick when you go, because the rut, I think everybody has the same kind of like mindset around that. Okay, I want to take a week off work, and when am I going to go? I want to go during the rut, especially if I'm an out-of-stater, and you usually only have a limited time to do that. But with that being said, that's everybody else's plan. So if you get around the spot that would be somewhat comfortable to camp around, maybe like a bigger city or something that has, maybe a nice hotel. When we stayed in Kansas, how many people were at the motel were hunters?
Every one of them.
Yeah.
Every one of them had a Yeti cooler and something in the back of the truck, tree stands.
Yep.
And every one of them was backed up against the hotel so their crap wouldn't get stolen.
It's like, hey, no one's stealing anybody's stuff because we're all in the same boat here.
Exactly.
But yeah, so with that being said, I seen some good bucks in November. They were definitely moving. Like, it got really crazy to a point where like I was walking trying to find this. I was walking to my pen, and I was dead set on walking to that pen. So I was running by some like pretty good sign, but I was like, I just want to see what this looks like. It got to the point where I was like, I'm going to have to stop, because as I was walking, I heard something like start crashing through this little tree line. And so I just kind of stopped and just stood still for a second. One doe runs by, another doe runs by, and I'm thinking something's getting chased because I could hear something else. And so I knock an arrow and I get my release ready, and all of a sudden here comes a spike, just huffing and puffing at these doe. And they kind of like started walking just a second ago. We're 25 yards away from me.
Mm-hmm.
And the doe just stops, squats, and pees. And I'm like, I'm sitting here. And so, I mean, that's about the best sign you can ask for. Like, actual deer they're chasing, and this doe just now urinated all over herself right here.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, definitely.
That's fresh pee.
Yes.
Yeah, I will say that the in November was the worst pressure I've ever seen in a deer hunting state was in Kansas. I mean, a lot of these places, like there's only a select amount of places you can actually park, and you go to these parking spots and there's 3 to 4 cars in each one of them, and there's not enough room for 3 to 4 hunters, especially with the right wind direction. And you're like, this is not going to work.
That's very true. And it isn't like everywhere else where it's like, or at least where we're used to, it's like, okay, you do have to play the wind really well here. Cause like in the mountain stuff, News on 6, what's his name?
Jordan Justin.
Travis Meyer could be like, all right, the wind is blowing straight southwest. And it's like, okay, cool. And then you get to a spot where it should be a southwest advantage, and it's like it's blowing northeast. And it's like, what? But it's just like it's just the mountain stuff, right? Versus Kansas, where if he says it's a south, northeast wind or something coming out of the northeast, it's like there's only very limited places, because it is a true northeast wind. There's only very limited places you can put where you can't sit on this specific piece because there's only like a limited tree line, so people can only be in so many spots.
There might be 400 acres in only one spot, and there you can hunt, and there's 3 people, and you're like, all right, I'm good, go to the next spot. We did a lot of that.
But so if you were to pick one time a year to go to Kansas from an out-of-state non-resident perspective, when would you go?
I would go the first available week in September to hunt over beans. That's what I would do. And by that time, a lot of deer are out of velvet, but I think they're in the most predictable space they can be, because you have these large blocks of timber, which are bedding areas that a lot of times you can't even get through them because they're so impenetrable with cover, and they come out of those and flood into those bean fields. Now, you still got to know where they enter and exit the field and how to kind of hunt them on the right wind.
Yeah, but if you go to a spot and it's like, this looks like a cattle trail. Oh, wait, there's no cattle here.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's pretty easy to see.
I think that's the most vulnerable a Midwestern deer is early and late season. And for me, I really enjoy that September timeframe. We had really good success doing that.
I'd agree. I'd either go really early or really late.
Yeah, we had success doing both.
Yeah.
The wall doesn't look like it, but we had some good encounters.
We've seen a lot, okay? We've shot a lot with the camera.
NC Deer Hunter said, it's awesome watching mountain deer. My mounts are kind of like deer hide color at the darkest brown area of the Cape. And he said, well, the antlers are tan in color. Yeah, that's what I love about mountain deer, is that antler color. And they're just, I don't know.
There's something about them.
But when you see like a deer walking through the woods, and the bucks are pretty much the exact same size as the does. So when you see them walking through the woods, you're like, oh, that's a good sized deer. And you can't exactly tell because there's a lot of leaves on the ground, and they're kind of breaking up their antler color. And you get them in the binos, you're like, that's a big buck. And you put your
big giant.
You put your binos back in, and I've noticed for me, it's a lot harder to tell like if it's a buck or a doe very, very quickly, because the antlers blend in so well in the shade and stuff.
I think they're a lot easier to sneak up on you too. Like,
oh yeah,
in the early season, because it's like you don't have all those leaves crunching or the really loud pine needles or anything like that.
Oh yeah,
so
they're in a prettier color than that. He said, it is super hard to play the wind in the mountains. I use Hunt Stand to check the wind, And when I get to the least, it's completely different than what Hut Stand says. Yeah, the swirls. Well, you got a couple of different things working against you. You have topography, and then you have the thermals, and then you get into some of those spots like the creek and stuff, and it's just weird.
A good saying we use is, if you sit in your tree and you're like, dang, the wind's hitting me in the back of the head, just shimmy.
Where it's in
that-
your face.
Yeah, shimmy around the tree and just look the other way.
And what's hard about it too is when you get in these places where where almost everything is bedding cover, whether it's the tall native grasses or the select cuts or briars or whatever. A lot of times you're surrounded by cover, and you're like, well, I expect the deer to come from that way, but they can come behind me, they can come left, they can come right.
That's another thing. It seems like they walk anywhere and travel where they want to.
Mm-hmm.
There's no like specific A to B. Okay, that's patternable. I guess that's the right word. They're a lot less patternable than like the ag country deer.
They're very nomadic. I just think they bed according to the wind and all that sort of stuff. But what's really weird about them is like they'll come from that direction. Rarely do you see the same buck twice, but you'll see them come from that direction, and then the next time they'll come from the complete opposite direction. I had a buck that I shot on public that he came by me at 70 yards. He went up on the hill to the south, and then 2.5 hours later, he came around and hit me from the west. Like he had just circled all the way around and came back, and I was like, he's back where he started. He took a 2-hour loop for no reason. He came back underneath me. I was like, huh, that's kind of weird.
He was onto you. No.
Yeah.
So you said ag, like if you're hunting Kansas, like ag country. You said you'd be there as a non-resident the earliest possible weekend you could go, just to
Right.
hunt over food. So let's switch it up a little bit. You're a non-resident, not from Oklahoma, or maybe you're from Oklahoma. In the big ag fields, you said you would choose to hunt the first week of September, or the quickest you could, just to hunt over the ag, less pressure, more predictable. So let's say for mountain bucks, when would be your ideal time to take 1 week off?
Oh, probably the first really good weather front in November. That's probably what I'd pick on a mountain buck.
Why is that? Explain yourself.
Just because, in those places where there's a lot less deer density, like the mountains, one hot doe can wreak a lot more havoc than they do in
That's true.
in ag country, because we've seen it in the mountain bucks. A lot of times when one doe goes in, there's such a scarcity of does that you can see multiple bucks on one doe. Like the most I've ever seen on one doe in the mountains was 3 bucks chasing a doe, and every single one of them was Pope and Young.
And every single one of them was out of range.
And every single one of them was about 70 or 80 yards away. So that's what I like to do, is that first really good cold front in November. And if you can be flexible with your work, that's usually the best. But and it's awesome because you'll see them. Me and Justin also hunted where there was 2 big ones chasing a doe, probably 2 like 140 pluses chasing a doe, and you just see the doe busting through the grass, and
Could you imagine
chasing her? 2 of them.
Oh my God! Poor
It's
doe.
awesome.
Poor doe.
Yeah, you don't want to be a doe that goes into heat that first
Mm-mm.
really good cold front November, because there's a lot of good ones chasing them.
Yeah.
At the Hunter's Advantage, we live by the KISS slogan.
You were not supposed to tell them that.
No, I meant we like to keep it simple, stupid. All jokes aside, Exodus is the definition of keeping it simple. Let's say you aren't really sure what arrow setup you should run. The Exodus Arrow Builder will help you build the right arrows for your exact setup.
Or if you don't have time to change those trail cam batteries in the dog days of summer, Exodus has a great selection of cell cameras and regular trail cameras. And if you pair them with one of their solar panels, you'll be set for a long while. I've shot over a dozen deer and a big old black bear in Saskatchewan with these arrows, and I trust them to fly right and get the job done. And they have something for everyone with the Exodus NIS micro diameter arrows or the Exodus MMTs.
So if you want to save money on Exodus arrows, cell cameras, or anything else they got on their website, make sure to check out ExodusOutdoorGear.com and use code HA10 for 10% off.
Once again, that's ExodusOutdoorGear.com, and make sure to use code HA10 for 10% off at checkout. Now let's get back to the podcast.
Yeah. I think that kind of. I think you hit it right on the head. With that, because they're, like I was saying earlier, or you said, they're super nomadic in the mountains. So like when you're trying to hunt them early season, it feels somewhat like you just try to get lucky because they're on food, but it's like, okay, acorns. Well, there's about 50,000 acorn trees here. Now, you could really go take the time and like figure out which ones are dropping heavy. You can go try to find a good dropping oak tree where you can like audibly hear acorns fall like while you're standing there, like tuk, 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 and then you look around and you see all the footprints and all that good stuff. You can look for that, but it does take a lot more time and effort. And you can do it, but if you're an out-of-stater or someone who has limited time and to really get in the chili, obviously going forward now, I'm not going to set up on something unless I see that and I'm like, okay, they're coming here. But I guess that's what I say. It'll take more time to find those areas, but I think when you do, it'll be well worth it.
Exactly. Yeah. If you're hunting on the weekend, you want to be in the chips. You don't want to be sitting there hoping.
Yeah.
I've done enough hoping in my deer hunting career.
Dude.
NC Deer Hunter said, "Oh yeah, no pattern on the mountain deer." Yeah, you're exactly right. I think that's what makes them so fun, though, is not knowing.
When you get it done, it's like it is possible.
Yeah, and you also are like, that was luck.
Yeah.
Like that's just time on tree. I think time on tree and being in a good spot. And sometimes even in the mountains, you're like, I know this is a good spot, but I did not see a deer today.
It just doesn't happen.
And you just have to know. You have to try again.
Well, you hear those people. It's like talking about mountain bucks where they think the deer go like travel like in 3-day rotations, and I'm sure some do, but it sure doesn't feel like that when you're on like a week-long vacation. It's like I've been here 6 days.
Yeah, and unless you're in one of those, our rule is kind of the 3-sit rule.
Yeah.
Like if you go a morning, an evening, and a morning, and you don't see a deer, even if it is a good spot, you probably need to move, just because that is too much time to be wasting on a 1-week trip. And if they're not moving there, they're probably moving somewhere else. So even if a spot has historically been good or gave you a good look maybe earlier in the week, you got to get in them.
That, and I think the mountain scenery changes, like that whole game changes on a year-to-year basis.
It does.
Because like you could have a nice select cut or clear cut, and that thing could be money, especially the first year. Like first year money, second year, all the way up until maybe the third year. It's marginal, might be able to pan out, but that fourth and fifth year, it's like But each year within that same cut, I mean, you can just see it not go downhill, but like obviously it's a vast amount of land, and there's probably a lot better habitat than what this once provided. So the deer are going to move on.
Well, you see a lot of those immature pines and cedars and stuff that are growing up, and even immature little oaks. They get enough branch out where that it starts to become nothing grows on the bottom down there, and it's real thick.
Well, you've seen that.
Food.
Yeah, you've seen that in Kansas, like on the edge of all those ag fields and stuff. Like it'd just be bare from basically head high of a deer.
Yeah, exactly.
It's pretty cool.
Taylor said water level has never personally affected me. Nice.
It does me because I don't swim.
Dude, holy crap, it's almost June. I can't believe that. It is catfish time. I didn't realize that. Maybe we should go put our hands in some holes tomorrow. You take this one.
Aguera says it's impossible to get a week off on the first week of deer season, but we do get the first day of deer season off required.
Imagine living in a state where it's a holiday to get the first day.
Dude,
that'd be so sweet.
America's so great.
First week of deer season. I don't know when North Dakota seasons are, so but that's pretty cool. That's pretty neat.
I feel like it's like a late September one. I'm not
in North
Dakota.
I don't know. The Dakotas have mule deer, so I would assume it'd be somewhere in September. NC Deer Hunter said the hottest time of the season at my lease is the second week of November till December 1st. The rut is on strong during those times here. Yeah, I think that's pretty right. Yeah, even
and I agree because like on the private that I hunt, dude, anything after December, good luck.
Oh yeah,
it's doe season.
You're all pressured out at that point. It's not even doe season. You just see their head poke out of the trees and then they go right back in.
Yeah,
they don't play that game.
I go out there for a doe, and it's like I might see one.
Hottest time of the season. Yeah, I think that timing's pretty good for most of the country right there, unless you're like in a far South Texas when they rut in like January. I don't know. We've had really good luck. To me, it always kind of seems like the rut's a little bit later. Like in recent years, especially in the really hot years, like, used to, it'd be like October 30th, and we're seeing like really good, like pre-rut, like really good start of the rut behavior. And now it doesn't seem like till the 6th, 7th, 8th where it turns on.
The last 2 years, it was definitely that. Like we didn't get that first initial cold front. That could be a good talking point. Like Also, don't schedule your vacation time, your rut time around a certain date, because that's what we did the last 2 years.
Yep.
And it kind of bit us in the butt, because let's say we'd go like on a rutcation November 2nd, all right, and we're going to stay till like the 9th or something like that. And lo and behold, it wasn't good, and especially like the mountain stuff where it's like, okay, you can't see a long distance, and so you could be 150 yards out of the game and like never know it, right? So
Yeah.
so it eats on you. But then you just realize like, hey, it isn't the spot, because 6 days later, when you're already burnt out and ready to go home, a cold front hits, and then that next morning you start seeing action. You're like, oh, so
Yeah.
it wasn't the spot.
Mm-mm. Yeah, it's really easy to blow your wad
Yeah,
because you get, at least what I do is I tend to be like, well, I can make it happen in adverse conditions. Like, oh, I'll make it happen. I'll just
Yeah.
hunt really hard.
I'll power through it.
And then you get to the point where you're like day 5, day 6 of not sleeping. And then it finally turns on. And you're like, my battery's at 0.
Yeah,
I don't have any. So what we've talked about doing is, especially if you have flexibility in your job where you can kind of like say, hey, I'm going off sometime in these 2 weeks, like kind of just stand by. I'll wait for the weather. If you can do that, I think you can really up your success, because you can hit on that first day of that cold front and be in the right spot, because it's like a light switch. I mean, you can be in one stand and see nothing, and the next day you turn it on with a good cold front, especially in November. It's like, I saw 10 deer today.
Would you rather hunt? So let's say a cold front's moving through. Would you rather that cold front move in like midday, where you would be very first sit of that cold front would be the evening of that cold front, or would you rather it come in overnight and you sit that morning time?
I like sitting in the mornings.
Do you?
I really like when it's been really, really hot, and the first peak of the sun is like, okay, it's been cold all night and I know they're going to be moving. That's my favorite time to hunt, is because I don't like hunting in the morning. It's hot and then it kind of slowly gets cold through the day. I like hitting in on a morning, but I'm also a morning guy.
Yeah. Well,
I've had the majority of my bow hunting success in the mornings.
yeah.
I think you're kind of the opposite.
Well, I like evenings. I like evenings because I like, being able to for sure know, like, take my time walking in, which you can in the mornings too, but you can kind of scan and see as you're walking in. It's like, okay, I didn't bust anything. You can kind of watch really where you put your feet. I just think there's nothing better than getting in there into the stand all set up. What you think is flawless, it probably isn't. I probably busted like 10 deer from setting up, but like there's nothing better than getting in as slick as possible and setting up and just being like, take a deep breath and just like, okay, things are starting to get quiet. And it's like, okay, right when everything's starting to go to sleep, things are actually starting to heat up. And that's just a cool feeling on that aspect of it. But also like the flip side where it's like, all right, I'm in here. It feels like, I hope I didn't spook anything. That's what gets me more than anything. It's just like knowing or not if you spook something. And then as everything's starting to wake up, kind of like what you describe it as, like it's immediately the best action of the day.
It is.
And you don't have to wait for it.
Yeah, it's like one's instant gratification and one's like delayed. You're like, come on, get dark. And I'm like a sun peaks. I'm like, here we go.
Where?
And I've had that happen before where I'm sitting there in the complete darkness and I hear 2 heads just smash together, like, and that was on public, and I'm just like, let's go. Like it's still like pitch black dark, and I hear them smashing, and it's not somebody rattling. It's 2 deer going at it. And I'm like, let's go. It's gonna be a good day. And I think I shot a buck that morning. It's like, this is sweet.
That's what. It's kind of frustrating too, because like it'll almost be shooting light, and it's like I can kind of see like the outline of things, barely, and all of a sudden you hear something walking like 40 yards away from you. You're like, I can tell that's a deer, but I can't see it. So like it needs to hurry up and get light. That's
when I use my binos, because they got better.
Pull that spotlight out of your bag and be like,
yeah, exactly. He said, I think he's talking about their rifle season, where it said it's November 8th through 24th. Yeah, that sounds about right for a rifle season. That's awesome. NC Deer Hunter said, do you ever make mock scrapes? What are some scrape products that you do use? That's interesting. What's your thoughts on that?
Man, the only scrape products I use is the one God gives me, and the deer usually makes those. I don't know, like I'm not against mock scrapes. I just never have personally done them. Because my private, where that's 5 minutes away from my house, I I don't have the deer numbers to be able to do that. Plus, I think anything that's out of the ordinary, in which if I would like hang a rope or a vine or something, like to me that seems out of the ordinary, but I just feel like my private piece with all the neighbors and stuff, like the deer are locked in. So if they're like anything abnormal, they're like, I don't think so. But again, I think it'd have to be like a 3-year process for me to do a scrape, where it's like, okay, they have to know it's there, see it before.
You're talking about on your private.
Yeah. But as for public, like, no, I've never did one.
I know a lot of people use them for camera inventory. That's one of the things that I'm considering doing on the lease is putting a rope scrape.
You could get away with that though, because y'all don't have like that high pressure.
Yeah, the pressure's not too bad. That is something we're going to start doing. There's not any products that we particularly use or recommend because we don't really do mock scrapes. And I know people do them on public for inventory as well. And I've actually I've had several mock scrapes just by happenstance that other people have put around me on public, like hunting in one of my stand locations, and there's a mock scrape, 80 yards away that someone else made. And it does work. Like, I know it absolutely works. It's just not a tactic that we've used a ton. And a lot of that has to do with we're hunting in pressured areas. And I don't know. I just feel like that's another piece of intrusion that if you don't take like a long-term look at it, it could come and bite you.
I think it's kind of like what do they call that? Blind grunting. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it can work.
I feel like you'd do more damage than, on accident than you would if you just never would have did it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But I do have a piece of private that there's a good amount of mature bucks on that I know a mock scrape would do good. And since I'm not planning on hunting over feeders on that that private anymore, I think that'll be something I'll try to hunt over is those mock scrapes. And I also want to put my ghillie suit on and try to kill a mature buck with my recurve on the ground.
That'd be sick.
That's my goal this year. So maybe I can do it over a mock scrape. He said, I use Black Widow Deer Lure, the Branch Butter, and the Scrape Master are awesome products. Yeah, I don't doubt it. I've heard a lot of good things about Black Widow Deer Lure. I've never used it myself, but we see a lot of people using Tinks, a lot of people using like dough in a can, the spray.
The thing that drives me nuts though is like when you walk on a piece of public and all of a sudden you just see like those little styrofoam drip things.
Yeah.
Oh, I was wondering what's happening, and people just leave them there. That's what upsets me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, dude, don't even do it if you're going to do that.
Yeah. A lot of people will spray their boots down and walk in with that can and just throw it away. You see, I would say that's one of the most common piece of trash that I see on
some sort of
deer attractant, whether it's a Tinks from a limb or something else. But yeah, no, we don't do a whole lot of scrapes. It's something I'd like to get more into. I feel like the more bucks that you kill, the more variety you'll try in your approaches. And I think we're just now getting to the point where it's like, well, I'm willing to lose one to try to do this. In the past, I wouldn't have done that. So it's not something that we've done.
Well, what are you thinking?
Oh, let's go. We'll go 5 more minutes, and then we got to roll. So if you got any other questions,
it's 3:00.
Yeah, you got any other questions? Drop them below. I think we're gonna try to make this one an hour. And I never went live on Instagram. I just realized that.
No, it's great.
You have to click go live.
That's dumb.
Yeah, that's silly.
Oh well.
So now that you didn't get into Kansas, what are you looking forward to this season?
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Just to rub a little salt in the wound.
I've only known that for about 24 hours now, and I'm just as upset. Yeah, I just have a vengeance with Kansas. That's the reason I want in so bad. But so you guys are hunting. You care if I say the region?
No, just
okay.
Kansas.
Well, you guys are hunting in like northern Kansas, and we already planned on going to Nebraska like early season.
Yes,
September. So if for some reason we don't get it done in early season September, when you guys go up there for your 2 weeks muzzleloader season in Kansas, that's just pushing me to go back up there at that time, just so we'll be in the general vicinity. So if like I get it done, I can call you guys, be like, hey, after you guys get done hunting this evening, come up here, help me, we'll celebrate, and then heck, I'll come film for you guys since I'm already in the area, and then kind of vice versa.
Yeah, so Nebraska. Now, if we get it done in Nebraska in early September, then you might have to find another state.
I'll figure it out.
Yeah.
I'm sure I'll still be battling out in Oklahoma. So. I usually do.
NC Deer Hunter said, I can't stand to see trash in the woods.
Amen, brother.
I'm with you. And he said, okay, fellas, what is your go-to hunting camos? Right now we both use Sitka, but I would say that's just because we
that's what our girlfriends have bought us
from
time to time.
From shoot, I got my first piece of Sitka like 7 years ago, and it's taken probably about 7 years to get all the pieces that I wanted, just because they're so expensive. But I'm not a snob on any of the camos. Like I would use
If it works, it
Kuiu,
works.
I would use Osseo. I don't really care as much about the camo pattern. I'm more about the actual utility of the jacket. Like
Yeah.
it's got a face mask in it, or this is a really nice thermal that wicks moisture, or this is rainproof. Like I care about the quality of the gear a lot more than I care about the camo.
Yeah.
The camo's not really a big deal.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm the same way. And if you can find a good deal on anything, I mean, whether it be kind of like you said, Kuiu or Osseo or Sitka or anything like that, it's like just buy it and wear it. I mean, looking the part and being the part's two different things. And I mean, you're out there for your comfortability. So, I mean, trust me, because there's times like during late October or early October, if we're hunting in Kansas in September, it's like I'd rather be in shorts than anything. So I don't need any type of camo.
And we have hunted in shorts before.
We have.
We shot a deer in shorts.
Yeah.
And
I remember
athletic
that.
shorts and boots.
Remember that.
I remember that. He said, I'm trying to figure out what I'm changing to. I'm leaning towards Osseo myself. So I'll tell you this. Not that Joe needs a shout out or any endorsement from us, but the people that I've heard that have used Osseo really like it. And Joe seems to be a pretty much stand-up guy. And so if it's anything like the Sitka, like the more technical gear, the good layering systems, I would definitely give Osseo a shot. We haven't, but I would.
I mean,
I definitely would give it a shot. So yeah, and it's good for whitetail bow hunters. That's what it's designed for. It's a pretty sweet pattern too with the owl, the raptor camo. All right, we'll do this.
Good concept.
We'll do this last one. He said, "I'm hoping to get a moose hunt for 2024. Very limited tags. I
that
hope so."
would be bad to the bone. A moose. I wonder where at.
He's in North Dakota.
So would it be a Shirish?
That would Shiras.
I always struggle saying it.
Yeah, that would be now I can't say it.
That's what I mean. It's hard.
That would be a moose. Yeah, that's one of the littler
All right, guys.
varieties. Yeah, we need to stop. But yeah, moose hunt would be amazing. I put in for a moose in Colorado. I did not get it, and I'm going to put in one for one in Wyoming.
Are the results out?
For the everything but the elk, the mule deer, and the antelope.
Okay, because I didn't put in for moose for Colorado.
Yep, and I did not buy a preference point. So, yep. Yeah, we appreciate you guys tuning in. These are fun. Every time we're together, we're going to try to do one of these. Easier to do them in person.
And also, if you guys are hearing this from maybe Spotify or Apple Podcasts, or if this is already up on YouTube when you're seeing it and you're not watching it live, if you guys have any more questions or anything, for some odd reason, shoot us a DM if you want to tell us what we're doing wrong, right? If any concepts you all want discussed or anything like that, just give us a shout.
Yeah, we're always looking for new questions and to meet new people. So we get messages every week, and it's awesome to meet some of you guys and hear your stories and what you guys are interested in. So feel free to shoot us a message, and we can connect there. If you're watching this on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, make sure to leave us a rating and review. 5 stars. If it's not 5 stars, just please don't leave it. So,
and these lives aren't the only thing we do, right? Like we sometimes have guests on. Might just be an internal, not live, that we discuss like maybe our future plans, or we have hunt talks, or yeah, just
we have all kinds of formats for the show.
Right.
So make sure to subscribe and leave us a rating and review wherever you're listening or watching, and we'll catch you guys in the next one.
Jesus loves you.
Bye.